You know what's interesting? In a world where everyone's documenting every coffee, every outfit, every moment of their day, there's a small group of people who just don't. They're on social media, they might even be active in the comments, but scroll through their profile and you'll barely find a photo of their face. Maybe one profile picture from 3 years ago, and that's it. Most people assume these folks are either insecure, antisocial, or hiding something. But after years of studying human behavior and talking to hundreds of people who live this way, I've discovered something fascinating. These people often possess a psychological trait that's becoming increasingly rare in our modern world, and understanding this trait might completely change how you think about social media, validation, and what it really means to be confident. Let's dive in. The trait we're talking about. The trait is called internal locus of self-worth. Now, I know that sounds academic, so let me break it down in plain English. People with an internal locus of self-worth determine their value based on their own standards, their own assessment of who they are, and their own internal compass. They don't need external validation to feel good about themselves. They don't need others to confirm that they're attractive, successful, or living a good life. Compare that to what most of us have developed, which is an external locus of self-worth. We determine our value based on how others perceive us, the likes, the comments, the followers, the compliments. We've outsourced the job of making us feel good about ourselves to other people. And here's where it gets really interesting. People who rarely post their photos aren't avoiding social media because they lack confidence. It's actually the opposite. They possess such a strong internal sense of self that they simply don't need the feedback loop that photos provide. They know who they are without needing hundreds of people to confirm it. But there's more to this than just confidence. Let me explain the deeper layers. The attention economy and what it's doing to us. We're living in what researchers call the attention economy. Your attention is literally currency now. Every app, every platform, every piece of content is designed to capture and hold your attention because that's how these companies make money. But here's what most people don't realize. When you post photos of yourself regularly, you're not just sharing moments. You're entering into a psychological contract. You post a photo and then you wait. You check back to see how many likes it got. You read the comments. You compare this post's performance to your last one. Maybe you feel a little rush when the numbers are good or a little deflated when they're not. This creates what psychologists call intermittent reinforcement, which is the same mechanism that makes slot machines so addictive. You don't know exactly how much validation you'll get, but you know you'll get some, so you keep pulling the lever. People who don't post their photos have essentially opted out of this entire system, and that requires something pretty remarkable: the ability to resist one of the most powerful psychological forces of our time, the need for social proof. What the research actually shows. There's some fascinating research on this that doesn't get talked about enough. A study from the University of Pennsylvania found that people who reduced their social media usage to just 30 minutes per day showed significant decreases in loneliness and depression. But the interesting part wasn't just about usage time, it was about what type of usage. The research distinguished between passive consumption, just scrolling and looking, and active posting, especially posting photos and waiting for responses. The people who struggled most with anxiety and self-esteem issues were those heavily engaged in the posting and validation cycle. Another study from York University looked at what they called self-presentation concerns on social media. They found that people who constantly post photos of themselves score higher on narcissism scales but lower on actual self-esteem. Think about that for a second. The people who seem most confident posting all these photos are often dealing with deeper insecurities. Meanwhile, people who rarely post photos but engage with content in other ways showed higher levels of what researchers call authentic self-esteem, the kind that doesn't fluctuate based on external circumstances. The privacy paradox. Here's something else that's really interesting about people who don't post their photos. They understand something about privacy that most of us have forgotten. Privacy isn't just about hiding things or being secretive. Privacy is about having control over your own narrative. It's about choosing what parts of yourself you share, with whom and when. When you constantly post photos of yourself, you're giving up that control. You're allowing hundreds or thousands of people to form opinions about you based on curated moments. You're inviting comparison, judgment, and commentary from people who don't know the full context of your life. People who protect their image aren't being paranoid, they're being intentional. They understand that once you put something out there, it takes on a life of its own. That photo you posted during a rough patch in your life, it might not represent who you are today, but it's still out there, still shaping how people perceive you. There's actually a term for this in psychology called context collapse. It's what happens when content meant for one audience gets seen by everyone. You post a fun, silly photo for your friends, but your boss sees it, your family sees it, that person you went on 2 dates with sees it. Everyone interprets it through their own lens, and you have no control over that interpretation. People who rarely post photos intuitively understand this, and they've decided the loss of control isn't worth the whatever validation they might receive. The relationship with presence. This is where it gets really deep. People who don't post photos tend to have a completely different relationship with experiences themselves. Think about the last time you went somewhere beautiful or experienced something special. If you're like most people, you probably thought about how it would look on Instagram before you even fully experienced it yourself. You framed the shot, took multiple versions, maybe even waited for other people to move out of the way so your photo would be perfect. But in doing that, you actually removed yourself from the experience. You became a documentarian of your own life instead of a participant in it. People who don't post photos have broken free from this. When they're at a concert, they're actually watching the concert, not recording it through their phone screen. When they're having dinner with friends, they're fully engaged in the conversation, not thinking about angles and lighting. There's something profound about this. It's a recognition that the experience itself is more valuable than the proof of the experience, that being there matters more than showing you were there. I talked to someone about this recently who put it beautifully. She said, "I realized that I was living my life for the story I could tell about it, rather than for the actual living of it. Once I stopped posting, I started actually being in my own life again." The social pressure and how they handle it. Now, let's be real, not posting photos comes with social pressure. People think it's weird. They ask questions. Why don't you post anything? Are you okay? Are you hiding something? And here's where another aspect of this rare trait shows up: the ability to tolerate social discomfort without conforming. Most of us are deeply social creatures. We're wired to fit in, to be part of the group, to not stand out in ways that might get us rejected. This is evolutionary psychology at work. For thousands of years, being excluded from the group meant death, so we developed strong instincts to conform to social norms. But people who don't post photos have developed something that overrides this instinct. They have strong enough internal values that they're willing to be the odd one out. They're comfortable being misunderstood. They don't feel the need to explain themselves to everyone. This isn't stubbornness or contrarianism, it's genuine independence of thought. They've examined the norms, decided they don't align with their values, and chosen differently despite the social cost. The connection to deeper fulfillment. Here's something I've noticed in talking to people who live this way. They tend to derive their sense of accomplishment and satisfaction from different sources than the rest of us. While many people get a dopamine hit from posting a photo and watching the likes roll in, these individuals get their fulfillment from intrinsic rewards: mastering a skill, having a meaningful conversation, making progress on a personal project, building deep, real relationships with a small circle of people who actually know them. There's research backing this up too. Self-determination theory, one of the most robust frameworks in psychology, tells us that people are happiest when they satisfy 3 basic needs: autonomy, meaning feeling in control of your own life and choices; competence, meaning feeling effective and capable; and relatedness, meaning having genuine connections with others. The constant photo posting cycle actually undermines all 3 of these. It reduces your autonomy because you become dependent on others' responses. It threatens your competence because your self-worth becomes tied to metrics you can't fully control. And it damages relatedness because it encourages superficial connections based on image rather than substance. People who don't post their photos have, often unconsciously, structured their lives to satisfy these needs in healthier ways. The nuance we need to acknowledge. Now, I want to be really clear about something. I'm not saying everyone who posts photos is insecure or doing something wrong. And I'm not saying everyone who doesn't post photos is enlightened and psychologically healthy. Some people genuinely enjoy photography and self-expression through images, and they do it from a healthy place. Some people don't post photos because of social anxiety or actual insecurity, not confidence. The key difference is the motivation. Are you posting because you genuinely want to share something, or because you need the validation? Are you not posting because you don't need external approval, or because you're afraid of judgment? The rare trait I'm talking about isn't just about the behavior of not posting. It's about the internal state that makes that choice possible and natural. What this means for the rest of us. So if you're someone who does post photos regularly, what can you take from this? First, ask yourself why you're doing it. Really dig deep. Is it because you enjoy it and it aligns with your values, or is it because you've become dependent on the validation it provides? Try an experiment. Go a week without posting any photos of yourself. Notice what comes up. Do you feel anxious? Do you feel invisible? Do you feel like you need to explain yourself to people? Those feelings are data points telling you something about your relationship with external validation. Second, work on building that internal locus of self-worth. Start small. Do things that matter to you without telling anyone about them. Let yourself be proud of something without needing others to acknowledge it. Practice sitting with the discomfort of not being seen. Third, reclaim your experiences. Next time you're somewhere special or doing something meaningful, resist the urge to document it. Just be there. Notice how different it feels to fully inhabit a moment rather than observe it through a screen. The bigger picture. Here's what I think is really happening. We're in the middle of a massive social experiment that's only been running for about 15 years. We've never before had the ability to broadcast our image and our lives to hundreds or thousands of people instantly and constantly. We don't yet know the full psychological and social consequences of this. But we're starting to see cracks. Rising rates of anxiety and depression, especially among young people. A growing sense of loneliness despite being more connected than ever. An epidemic of people feeling like they're not enough, like their lives aren't interesting enough, like they need to be constantly performing. The people who've opted out of posting their photos might be the canaries in the coal mine, sensing something the rest of us haven't fully recognized yet. They're showing us that there's another way to exist in the digital age. A way that preserves privacy, protects mental health, and keeps us grounded in what actually matters. The rare trait that people who never post their photos possess isn't mystical or unattainable. It's internal self-worth, autonomy, and the courage to resist social pressure. It's the ability to find fulfillment from within rather than from external validation. It's choosing presence over performance, substance over image, being over seeming. And maybe most importantly, it's the wisdom to understand that your value as a person has nothing to do with how many people have seen your face on a screen. In a world that's constantly trying to turn us into content, into personal brands, into performers in the theater of social media, choosing to simply exist without broadcasting that existence is almost revolutionary. So whether you post photos or not, the question worth asking is this: who would you be if nobody was watching? What would you do if you couldn't tell anyone about it? What would matter to you if there were no likes, no comments, no external validation at all? Those answers might tell you everything you need to know about whether you're living for yourself or for an audience. Thanks for watching. If this resonated with you, let me know in the comments. And if you want more content exploring the psychology behind modern behavior, make sure to subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.